to the Water People podcast. I'm Lauren Hill, and my co-host is Dave Rastovich. Today, we're in conversation with artist Taki Gold. Liberian by birth, Taki fled the civil war that took the lives of 250,000 people. Upon arriving in the U.S., he set out to transform the dark relationship he'd once had with the ocean by taking up surfing. His latest album, Girl God, is a testament to the women who carried him through the horrors of war. Our podcast comes to you from the coastal land and waters of both the Bundjalung and Gubbi Gubbi nations. We'd like to acknowledge these traditional custodians and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. We'd also like to extend that respect to all First Nations people this podcast ripples out toward. This week, we have a surfing story unlike we'd ever heard before. We sat down with musician, designer, surfer Taki Gold to hear about the way that he's transformed his relationship with water. Taki was born in Liberia on Africa's west coast, and as a 6-year-old, he fled on foot from his country to the U.S., where his mother and father were waiting for him.
Yeah, I feel like one of the first experiences of Liberia for the global surfing culture was sliding Liberia film project a few years ago. A couple of our good friends, Crystal Thornburg-Holmesy and Chris Del Moro, were part of that. And beside that, there's been very little connection between surfing and Liberia in modern times. Surely, like the rest of Africa, there's plenty of people surfing there back before the slave boats started turning up and taking people and forcing other people, the ones who were left, to go inland to avoid being on the coast and being taken. So it's such a mind-opening and shocking story to hear from Taki firsthand, his experience of the ocean there, what happened to people along the coastlines of Africa through the slaving trade, and then conflict and just so many layers of trauma, and to bring us to this modern moment where he is in California and has this profound story of personal story of war, conflict, trauma, how to reconcile all that, how to live with that, and not just live but thrive. You know, he's an incredible man to see his smile and his vibrance and how he personally is navigating his own unique path through such radical experience. I feel like I've never heard anyone speak the way he speaks about war, surfing, and living with both.
Yes, and so much of Taki's work is dedicated to the women and girls who nourished him and protected him and led him out of his war-torn country as a child. I just wanted to read a piece from the United Nations. For those of you who are a bit older, you might remember the media imagery of, child soldiers and also women who are really taking to the streets and trying to shift toward a more peaceful existence in Liberia. Quote, "Not long ago, images of child soldiers and the nation of Liberia were wedded in the minds of the international community. The country was struggling to end a horrific civil war, but military efforts were going nowhere. Then the mothers, grandmothers, and sisters of Liberia stepped forward and formed the Women of Liberia Mass Action for Peace campaign. They pressured Liberian men to pursue peace or lose physical intimacy with their wives. Wearing all-white clothing, the women of Liberia's capital, Monrovia, gathered at the fish market in the thousands, sitting, praying, and singing. Their images were seen around the world. The women of Liberia say peace is our goal, peace is what matters, peace is what we need." That was their clear message, stamped on a billboard in the downtown fish market. So women helped transform Liberia socially and politically, and also really transformed Taki's life.
The conversation with Taki, for me, is such a frame-altering conversation, because here we are in a moment where there is a lot of potential conflict in even Australia, very fortunate, very lucky country. There is a lot of division happening with people's worldviews and how to navigate COVID and the changing world right now, let alone things like climate crisis and whatnot. So his conversation, his experience actually, for me, really puts a lot of that into perspective, and that we really don't want to go down the route of us versus them and divided communities that end up in civil wars and end up creating mass trauma. And it's a radical time we're living in right now. And when we speak with someone like Taki, who's actually lived with the outcomes of very, very divided communities, we see that we really should be talking to each other and learning from those experiences. And Taki is such an amazing communicator to be able to share with us that experience and really leave me with the hope that none of us have to go through anything like that, and that it's incredibly profound, and he is incredibly resilient to have gone through what he went through and be able to go surfing and stoke us out and have amazing work that he's doing for that community back in Liberia. And we're just very, very grateful to have had a conversation with such an amazing spirit.
I just wanted to make a note that, personally, Taki definitely speaks in a way at times that makes me uncomfortable. We have completely different life experiences, and so we have different lenses for seeing and being in the world, and I love that. And that's part of our responsibility here, on the podcast, is to gather stories that represent diverse experiences from within our watery culture. Before we dive in, I wanted to put out a content warning. Taki shares about some of the violence he experienced, including rape and murder. So please make sure that you're in the right headspace to listen to his story, and make sure that there aren't any young ears around, because his story isn't appropriate for children. We always begin the podcast by asking our guests about a time or experience after which they were never the same. And we were wondering if you'd be up for sharing a story like that with us now.
Yes, I can think of one. So the story starts when I was 6 years old, and I woke up to a civil war in Liberia, and I felt that I was cheated because I wasn't prepared to witness the fullness of what a human being is capable of. So when I was, younger, but like when I was before 6, I guess, my parents did a very good job of showing me love, nature, laughter, dance, food, and just family. And like everybody, it was a tribe. And the war, the first day I saw something completely different. And I was wondering why wasn't I prepared for this? And war, the great thing about war is it's so honest that it doesn't protect you. It just forces you to be brave or you die, right? And it being honest, it shows you everything at once. It doesn't give you things in steps, So just because I was 6, it didn't ease things to me, or it didn't it was fair to everyone. It's like surf, like the wind blows on us all, right? So as I'm watching for the first time, rape, beheading, cannibalism, it's the soldiers, when they kill someone, they cut open their chest and take their heart and eat it. That's the way of gaining their strength as well. So seeing all the extremes, and my mom, she loves but doesn't love when I tell the story. But I grew up in a very religious family, not family, just my mom, right? But my mom kind of runs everything, so everybody had to obey. So I've, heard everything about God and like being the savior, and it just made perfect sense. Like this would be a perfect time for you to like come down and be like, all right, cut it out. Cause it was just nuts. And I started to think that, because it got so bad. This is like the first day too. It was just so bad that everyone just kind of froze. And me as a 6-year-old boy, just wondering, like, trying to understand just all of these actions. And so I heard a voice, and it was a very powerful voice, and it just shouted out to everyone to just drop their weapons and repent. And I was for sure convinced that God came down, and everyone stopped because it was a powerful voice. So as I looked, there was this guy, I call him the preacher, and he was just bold. And with all of those chaotic things happening, for somebody to just speak out, I mean, he was possessed with something. And it was very shocking how everyone was shocked, because it's like war was happening. It was kind of getting comfortable. But when this preacher spoke, it just felt really, really uncomfortable. And I looked to my right, there was this boy, and he was a soldier. He was probably around 12, 11. And he looked, and he just kind of like read I would say the room, but we wasn't in the room, we was outside. He just read all of our energies, and he looked at the preacher, and whatever he was doing, he dropped, and he just turned and he started to walk towards the preacher. So now I took my eyes off the preacher and I started to watch the boy. And what I saw in this boy was how full he was with who he was, how consistent he was with his step. Everything about him was so balanced. He didn't give anything away of what he was going to do. All he had was his AK-47 that he was dragging with him. So the tip of the AK-47, I'm watching it make lines like in the dirt. And then the boy walked by me, and the force of him just like lifted me up. And to this day, I still feel that I am infected with that energy that he passed along. So he walked to the preacher, and as I'm looking at the preacher, in a sense, the preacher seems like he's flying, like he's above ground, right? Because it was working. Everybody was listening. So his voice got louder. He got, bolder, got deeper. Because everything he was saying made sense. Like, we were just being horrible people and horrible people to ourselves, right? And when he saw the boy walk towards him, he started to shrink. His voice started to crack a little bit. And this boy just consistent with his force, right? And when the boy got closer and closer, as soon as the boy reached the preacher at that time was on his knees with his hands up. And that's when I said, uh-oh. And the boy, no emotions, still consistent, took his AK and emptied out the entire clip on the preacher. And then after all that was done, he turned around to the crowd and he yelled, "I killed God." And for me, that's when I started to take the contrast of war that I was going to need to become who I was going to be. So the fact that that boy said, "I killed God," number one, brought my mind from somebody being in the sky, brought that power closer to me, made me focus on the tribe of women that was in my group. So it kind of brought God down to them, right? Like there's nobody up there that's coming down to save you. Okay. And also, at that moment, I felt like I could be more powerful than war. And throughout the war, I'm pretty sure, you do have a few more questions about it, but the belief of the power that that boy had in himself. Now, it's all relative, right or wrong, but I'm just saying, just the principle, that energy was my weapon throughout the whole, forget the war, like United States, and, anything that I do. So that moment just made me realize that my environment, that I was so quick to like snap my fingers to leave because I didn't understand war. It kind of humbled me in a way, and to say, I'm glad that I'm here. You have so much to learn about yourself. Because if that boy knew everything about himself, you know what I mean? And I just knew that so I kind of deleted everything everybody has ever told me. And I just started fresh because I saw someone who was so full. And also it made me start to love my skin more because God was always white anyway, So it's like, it just brought so much power. And as a 6-year-old boy, yeah, it was a moment that changed me forever.
Well, Taki, I can't even place myself in that kind of experience and pretend to understand, but I can definitely say, hearing you speak about this with such a poetic tone, that you have this ability to share something that is, of course, radically physical, watching people do that to each other, the finiteness of bodies breathing, voices speaking, and then not anymore, the radical physical nature of that, but that you have been able to navigate all of those feelings and interpretations and energies in and around that is so unique and so powerful. And like I said, I can't even place myself there.
And how about as a parent?
Yeah.
Thinking, we do all that we can, even those of us who are in beyond privileged positions of living in safe places without war, to protect our children from, and to think of your mother, your parents being there, watching their beautiful son, seeing this. I just can't imagine the helplessness I would feel as a mother, but also the increased drive to protect and to bring close and to adapt in ways that I can't even imagine. I just can't even imagine it. I'm nodding my head, but yeah.
Well, I'm deeply sorry that you had those experiences, though the ability you have to share, and especially through your words and music and art forms, and connect with those of us like right now who come from the other side of the Pacific, the other side of the world, is super powerful. And speaking to that, I really want to know, what does that mean when you say more powerful than war? Can you articulate that a little more when you say that? What is it that you see and feel when you say that?
So with me being able to explain war in a way that is beautiful, it's 100% luck, because I was just, maybe not luck, I was just chosen to be in a group full of women. So me being that young, they figured that I would last a few minutes. So they just told me like the most incredible truth about myself. So these women, I call, gods, they started to explain war to me through art, because they knew what I was familiar with, right? So they knew I was unfamiliar with war, but I was familiar with music, dancing, rhythm, colors. So it's like The sounds of war was our music. When we went to fight, it was dancing because we had to move. We have the person with the best dance moves won. The best rhythm. Even the color red, they became my favorite color because that's all that I saw. And when war came and I started to be a 6-year-old boy, they left me because, it's like, you're not going to make it. But you have a choice you can let war happen to you or you can happen to war. And by telling, like, my mind at that time, 6, it's so, whatever you tell me, my imagination is going to go crazy. So it's like to tell a 6-year-old boy that war can happen to you or you can happen to it. So I started to happen to war. So every single thing that I saw, and then every single, frequency that I heard, I started to compose. I didn't know it was called composing then, but I just made, because one, I was kind of deleted with this notion of good and evil and right and wrong, because that's all relative. So in war, I tell the story all the time. There's, I see a guy or girl who is having fun killing someone, and the other person who is struggling, trying to survive, the energy always went to fun. And also sorrow, I saw how sorrow killed people a lot quicker, because the only thing that I couldn't, nobody should ever understand this, was rape. So everything happened everywhere you look, and you kind of got used to the killing and all that stuff. But rape is just something I can never, because then again, I'm surrounded by women, so they were next. And usually when girls got raped, 99% of them died during the rape in the war. So before, when it happened, it's like there was sorrow and tears and people crying. And then, like, as years went on, we realized that that energy, feeling sorry for someone, is just weak energy. Not energy, but frequency. So what we started to do is, like, we started to cheer, and it kind of shift. Think about a group of men raping a little girl and everybody's cheering. It's going to mess. It just, because the energy that we had, the whole thought is to feel sorry for someone who's not doing anything wrong. It's like we should be feeling sorry for the men who's doing this, not for, so.
What I hear you saying is something like, as a young person and maybe as a community without weapons, trying to stand up to soldiers with weapons, you were weaponizing your energy, the
Yes.
power of you collectively. You were weaponizing that and using what you had to move against forces that were physically more powerful maybe than the community.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And that started with cutting off the idea that being afraid of death, death became our best friend. And especially when we learned that, that their bullets were expensive. So it's like, it's an honor for somebody to use, like, the whole clip on you. And also not wishing to be anywhere else. So there was a story with my mom and my parents wasn't with me during the war. So they were in the United States when I got stuck. So that actually fueled me as well, giving me energy, because I thought they knew war was coming and they left me, because it just happened right when they left. But there was one night I was sitting with my sister and, like, we're staring at the moon, and I'm just wondering, like, what's a kid doing on the other side of the moon? And she goes, the same thing you're doing. And I go, there's war in America? She goes, no. And then I goes, then we're not doing the same thing. And she told me, she said, don't put your war above anyone else's. And she goes, they have wars in their rooms too. So the fact, and this is why I also share with people too, the fact that they feel privilege, you should, because I feel privileged. because again, God was brought here, right? So it's like for young people, if you don't tell them that they're God from the beginning throughout their whole life, like they'll try to become God by force. So a lot of people now are trying to become God by force, but they're doing it in ways where it's like everything is happening to them. Blame, blame, blame. The world is perfect. You know what I mean? We're here. So that's how I became more powerful than war there. And even when I came to the United States, I refused to be like infected with anything toxic, So even in class, when I was in like fourth grade and learning about all the stuff, history, and I was like, ugh, like, no, like I'm like, why would you tell me that? Like, why would you tell me that? And then I started to realize the stories of war in Africa is all told the same way. And I'm like, how do you think we're going to heal if everything we're telling is for sorrow, right? For you to feel sorry. And like, but how are we going to feel valuable and how are we going to grow and how are we going to detox? So when I came here, I was like, okay, nobody's going to tell that war was ever. And again, I went through the war without a mark, and I'm the only one that I've seen so far that has not been touched.
How many years was that, Taki?
3 years.
Wow.
So it took us 3 years to run from Liberia to the Ivory Coast.
And when you say run, do you mean on foot? Do you mean hiding out along the coast?
Oh yeah, on foot. And through that journey, I have met the most incredible people. And the most incredible people that I've ever met are the ones that are considered evil. I mean, the only ones that I would consider good, it's like the women that was with me, but they were strong. I couldn't just, if I'm crying and like tired, they're not gonna be like, they're not gonna hold me.
Who are these women that gathered around you?
It was my sister. Actually, she was my caretaker. I found out when I came into America, so she didn't even have to take care of me. And my aunts, my cousins, and then my grandma. My grandmother was the strongest out of us all, and she was the oldest. It's like she just like when we was running, she just walked like she, it was just like there was times when I was afraid and hiding, and I just watched her, and she just like everything just kind of just passed her by, and she moved at her own pace the whole entire time. Like she was in no hurry. It like the most amazing. And before the war came, she told me that I was here for an incredible journey. So like whenever I started to like regret or become angry, she would just give me this look, and I remember, oh, okay, fine, like you told me. I'm gonna stop being a crybaby. I'm supposed to go through this.
Taki, I can't help but think about how the single pointedness and the full-bodied focus that you spoke about when that boy walked past you, that fullness in his step and all of that. The story that we hear with war and conflict, and of the full-bodied focus that a lot of people speak about when they were in conflict, they speak of that when they come back to, say, civilian life. And they almost speak of those times, perhaps in conflict, in a semi-romantic, fond way where there's just a clarity to life. And like you were saying before, you're brave or you die. You have this focus where there's just something fully embodied about that. And, I know through the surfing experience, a lot of us gain that kind of quality to our moments when we're inside the center of a big wave and you have to stay focused because you're dancing on that fine line. And that is one of the main reasons for us to surf, for Lauren being a great longboarder, it's standing on the very tip of the longboard and just levitating with her toes over the nose. But there's so there's like this, there's these things on the outside that are happening, but it's the internal experience of being fully focused, I feel, that is really so full of magic for us. And you obviously feel that too when you play music, and music and surfing are hand in hand. So I just wanted to sort of go back a little bit with you, and I want to know what it is you think that filled that boy that way, because there's a lot of inquiry these days about how much it takes for people to pull the trigger on other people in war, and that historically it's been quite difficult to get soldiers to actually shoot and kill other soldiers. Like, you really need to either fill them up with drugs, or you need to heavily brainwash people to be that violent towards each other. So I was just wondering if there was an insight there from you around what it was that was filling that boy up so singularly and so focused, and that made such an impression on you.
Yeah, because one, after I answer this, I want to go back to surfing, because that's why now I haven't been inside of a barrel of a wave like you have, but like that's why I love going out to surf, because it actually reminds me of, it's the closest thing to remind me of war. So we will.
I haven't heard that before.
We can go. Yeah, it's
We'll
like the
get
closest
there.
thing.
We'll
Yeah.
get there.
So that boy brought the war back to us, because the thing about Africa, it's like, even that war, I feel like we wasted it because we didn't want it. Now if we was having an argument with ourselves and like we went crazy, that's different. But like, outside force always makes us to fight each other, and that's going to change with me, because here in America, like, they had a civil war, they had a quarrel with each other, like it was a family fight, right? They didn't want to break up. Somebody want to break up? No, you're not. It's us. It's never that. But that boy brought the war back to us, because that preacher was inviting somebody else that was never a part of our discussion. So my mom, very religious. My grandma pretended to be very religious, but she always told me before religion who we were. So it just brought it back to, this is on us. And like, that's the first step to healing, as a nation, right? We're not asking anybody else to come here and fix something. I don't care who it is. So you're right. There's a lot of drugs. There's a lot of like mind control, but those people don't really make great soldiers, because if you have to do all that to make a soldier, this kid did not have, he was just born to, it was his, he was walking in his truth. So the story before, how he ended up that way, but just the fact that he took the focus from me, from like looking everywhere else for help, and just brought it back to here, to my heart, for me, to me, like, I felt, I'm sure most people did not gather that information, but it was out there for all of us. And I just heard him loud and clear. And throughout my whole entire life, it's like, when you become God, is not like an ego thing, or is not like to diminish people that believe in one. It's just like, you're so valuable that it's you that's affecting everything, right? Become more valuable. If things are happening to you, then you're going to have a miserable time here, on this planet. I'll give a quick example. When I came to America and I heard about sex trafficking, it's like, oh, I hated all the sex traffickers, da, da, da. And I was like, okay. Is it because you're not more valuable? Like, is it because like you're not reaching those girls before they do. It's like you have to become more valuable. Don't forget the lessons that you learned in the war about right, wrong, good, bad, all that stuff. It's like they do that because it's valuable. Whatever value that they're doing, it's like, but you have to raise up your value to the world to be at least a contrast to that. So cool. I'm going to create a company where I make crowns and girls are gods. And it's like, I just kind of started from there. No matter how high or wherever it goes, instead of me being angry at them, because that's me giving my energy, because it's all energy, right? So yeah, it made me love the world right away as soon as he did that. So it made me love the war. It's like, okay, like you're here, be here. You even if for a moment, be here. And I still saw butterflies. Yeah.
That takes a lot of people, many, many decades of life and many decades of quiet study tucked away in hillsides to get to that point.
I call home sometimes. Like, hey, do you know they go like camping and on retreats and tents and stuff? And it's like, what? They do that? So I said, yeah. Do you go? No, I'm not. Done it my whole life.
Apologies for the interruption, but we'd like to take a moment to recognize the generous folks who help make this podcast possible. The Water People podcast is brought to you by the fine folks at Sanuk. In 1997, founder Jeff Kelly started out with one simple goal: to make people smile and to encourage them to pass it on. Sanuk has been advocating for a more playful and inclusive surfing culture for more than 2 decades, while crafting some of the comfiest footwear around. Thanks to Sanuk for your support and for encouraging water people around the globe to protect their happy places. Learn more about Sanuk's partnership with the Surfrider Foundation at sanuk.com.
Thanks to Gary McNeil Concepts, who put together cosmic boards for cosmic people. Gaz's boards combine recycled and plant-based materials that are built to last without sacrificing performance. To learn more, head to GaryMcNeilConcepts.com.
Taki, Liberia is a culturally diverse and historically complex place composed largely of indigenous groups, Black immigrants from the US, and immigrants from neighboring African countries. I was wondering, what's your ethnic heritage?
Well, so when I came to the United States is the first time I learned about like Black history and all that. Well, it's not Black history, it's American history. So I learned about the connections from Liberia and America now, and I was just so proud that, again, so there's bravery and then there is protection. So it's like me being born on my soil, somebody chose bravery to go back.
And what probably a lot of people listening don't realize, that Liberia as we know it now, was founded as a place to send freed slaves who had been stolen from Africa, brutalized in America, built the foundations of the US. And then when the conversation emerged about emancipation and freedom, a particular organization called the American Colonization Society decided that one solution might be to send freed slaves back to Africa into this artificially created state called Liberia.
Yeah. Yep, that stands for liberty. Yeah, I've heard different stories. It's like, so the slaves that went back to Liberia, and there was already tribal there. It's like, I don't know if they went there with like respect, or if they went there with like, okay, now like we're going to be the new white.
Was that at the heart of Civil War? I mean, it seems like that was to some degree the internalized power over structure that they learned from white Americans.
Well, it's always, if it's not Americans, it's It could be anyone. So it's like there is something, and I think it's religion, but there there is something that like tricks us to think like where we're fighting is not our home. Like the people that we're killing is not us. Like how rich our land is. So it's easy to like to go and say, "Oh, start a war and I will give you this." And it's like, "Well, you are ruining your like your roots, like where you grow." So at some point the light has to be spotlighted on us, because if it's never spotlighted on us, it means somebody else has to change it. And when somebody else has to change something, you can't blame them for shaping it in their favor. So that's why I feel honored that whoever chose to go back to Liberia and have me just be born on that dirt has, by me coming here, I see things completely different than how most people that look like me see things. Because it does matter where when I say your roots, I mean like your entire, like we are very different creatures and species than we should be, because that's the fullness of this world. So there's this thing like we're all the same. We're not. And when it would be boring, we would kill ourselves even a lot faster if we were. But we have to keep some spaces where like you can go, that's what I'm doing right now. It's like we have to have a foundation in Liberia where we add value to the world, where we don't build no more hospitals, we don't build no more churches, we don't build, because we're not sick, right? It's like we have enough hospitals in Africa. You just stop building hospitals. You're only going to invite more sick people. So it's like, don't come build our homes. Don't come adopt our babies. Now, it would be a problem if like a lot of Africans are coming here and just adopting white babies and bringing them to Africa. You don't see that happening, because it shouldn't. Like that shouldn't be a normal thing. So it's like, why don't we love each other? And I think I go back to that kid again. That kid made me love myself.
Taki, you've spoken a bit about the land and your roots being sown in the lands of Liberia. I'm interested about your foundational experiences with water.
Yeah, so I started to compose, and there was these two guys in California was doing a short film about like just three girls that was longboarding around the world, and they heard my music and they just wanted me to compose like a theme song for their film. And I have never surfed before, but my music is just because I score everything. So I'm really good at scoring, right? I've seen every single emotions 10 times. So I figured, I said, hey, I have to at least experience it just so I don't cheat like the music. And that's the film that I think you saw. I told my family, hey, grab your camera. We're just going to go and shoot this in a day. And even when I was new, and even till now, like with all of the social things that's going on, when all that happens, I run in the ocean because I know somebody's going to cut me off. And I love that. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not like, oh, you go because all this stuff. No, it doesn't happen in the ocean. And I love that.
What about even before your early surfing experiences, Taki? What about in Liberia? Did you have access to the ocean? Did you learn to swim? Did you play in the ocean as a child?
No, and again, it's like, I'm just going by what I saw in the war. The what hurt most is like we were not respecting nature. And I never saw people play in the rain. They played, but I never saw people play in the ocean. I don't remember going to the ocean. Again, I think it's that like we never had a chance to just detox as a people. So that's another thing too. I'm really excited to go back and like reunite people to themselves. Like the water, like we are water people. We don't think we are. but like we are, for food, for fishing, it's like, the best fish. But to view the ocean as something that's playing with us, we don't view it like that. It's like it's a foe.
What did the ocean mean in the context of war?
The ocean was a place where a lot of things that we no longer wanted to see were buried. So a lot of bodies were just thrown there. So I think that's like well, I'm sure that's another reason why most people are afraid of it, because they took a lot of people there to drown.
Well, yeah, it's the same reason why you don't want to play in a cemetery. I mean, it's not a natural place to go and play.
Right. So the first time that I started to surf, it was so healing for me, because it's like, again, it's becoming more powerful than war. And they looked at me weird, because like they never saw somebody so happy to fall every time. It's like, it was a day that we cut all that out because for film purposes, but like it's like, Taki, you can't just keep like, Taki, it's no. But it was just a day of play for me. Even now when I go, it's like there's these kids that live right by the beach. They all look like you. They surf like every single day, and they're so good. But like just watch them. Yeah, it's just nice to see a group of people viewing the ocean as play instead of something that's like a harm. So there's a lot of things that we need to heal with.
Taki, I wonder, when you say the word war, is it something that you can apply to lots of different experiences, but when you go in the water, because each of us who go surfing have our own unique interpretation and experience of it. For some, it's sport. For some, it's just exercise. For others, it's mental well-being. For some, it's a dance. For some, it's meditation. It's pretty much whatever we want it to be for us, that experience can be. When you go surf and you feel something that is so much stronger than our little earth suits here that we inhabit, do you view it in a way where it kind of relates to the war experience in any way, of the play of energies where you could view it as tension, the tension of the water wanting to pull you down or rising to the surface? Is that a bit of a conversation in your head? Is there anything in there that happens for you when you go in the water and you feel the strength of Mama Ocean? You feel that, and then and you feel your humanness?
Yes. The reminder is how consistently inconsistent the ocean is. Because like some days I have like good days, and the next day I go in thinking that I'm a surfer, and it's like
I think we can all relate to that.
We can all relate to that.
And it also reminds me of that boy again. Like whenever I do catch a wave, it again, that energy. Okay, perfect. You nailed it. That's how it felt. Him walking by me, it feels like surf.
It's such a testament to your resilient spirit and just the power of you, Taki, to know that you traveled to a new country, to the US, and one of the things that you sought out was to transform your relationship to this space that had been so full, the water that had been so full of death and heaviness and secrecy and mystery and fear. And you could have chosen to be a mountain person. Like you could have chosen to run far away from that place, but instead you chose to walk into the ocean, and you've chosen to pursue a buoyancy floating, between these worlds of your past and your future as a water person in a new way, a surfer. I just think it's really incredible that you made that decision. You made that choice.
It's unique that you said that because I think right next to that decision, that's how I view America as well. Because I was coming to a place that I could have held responsible for that war as well.
Absolutely.
But if I could play in war, it's like, there's no way I'm going to come here and be defeated, because the goal is to go back home. And it matters that I return as that boy in the contrast. Does that make sense? Like I went through war, came to the States, had his energy the whole time. Like didn't waver from becoming more powerful from war. And that means everything else. That I just say war, but like everything else that comes with this like amazing adventure called life.
Yeah, what I hear you speaking to is the call for each of us to protect, to nurture, to keep hold of the wonder-filled, playful, full of awe bit of us that we come into this world with, the childlike heart of us. And it feels like that's part of what you've done so beautifully, and you express in so many different creative ways now, is that holding on to that childlike spirit and letting it flourish instead of letting the world jade us and smash that childlike spirit.
Yeah.
Taki, do you have I keep thinking just then I was having these visions of and these words in my head of, the strongest fire and the heaviest hammer making the strongest sword, or the tightest string singing the highest note. All of these things where we have these experiences that build us in ways where we might think they might break us, but they can build us. And I wonder, are there times when you're wavering, like we all do, and you were saying, before you go to the ocean, and maybe one day you feel like you're just flying on the water, and the next day you're getting deeply humbled. But are there times where you're walking to the beach really in need of the sort of therapeutic side of surfing, or really in need of falling on a wave and coming back up to the surface? Do you have those times?
Probably like 99% of the time that I go to surf, it's for that. I'm very grateful to have a lot of mediums that can kind of mimic it, by a few percent. Like the only thing is, like, when I paint like on a canvas, it's like I'm just zoned out. But it's like being reintroduced to something that was yours all along, that was the greatest thing, that was right next to you. My whole entire life was from 0 to 6, by the way, 6 years old. So, and it's like, and also the excitement to go back home and do that there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's my therapy. It's my church. It's just a place where protection is not what you are aiming for, and bravery is not in the sense of like strength or like power, but just to be able to become more, which means like you have to just like, if you become more, it means you have to let go of you, because the ocean is more, right? And I understand why when you ask surfers about surfing, they can't explain it, because it's hard to really. War, I can explain it, but surfing, it's pretty difficult.
Can you have a crack at explaining what you said before about being cut off and wanting that experience? Because we kind of just passed through it.
Yes.
And I feel like in Australia, there's a lot of people surfing, and a lot of people don't like getting cut off.
Oh, really? Oh, no.
We mostly laugh about it, but yeah, what is it for you?
So for me is everything exists that should. So what I try to do is I try to exist in a way that selfishly that I want my world to be like. So I really rely on how I feel about me. And I live in a nice place. So all my neighbors are white. So they just assume, you know, like, Taki, we're going for a march, come. And so I go, oh, cool. Like, what are we marching for? We're marching for equal rights. Oh, cool. But I have it. And then didn't know what to say. And I was like, why would I march? Why would I march? I was like, I actually, like, I'm God though. Like way beyond that. So where are we going? you know, and it's like, and it's like this sorrow. It's like, why are you bringing me your weakness? Like, who do you think you are? And have you been listening to me? Like, do you actually believe that I believe that I'm God? Because if you don't have to believe that I am, but if you believe that I believe that I'm God, like, why would you bring me your weakness?
Mm.
I want your strength. I want your joy. Like, that's valuable to me.
Mm.
And then the world is acting differently to me, and I go in the ocean because it's just so consistent.
Mm.
It's like, I know I'm not the best surfer there because there's reasons and there's results. I can have plenty of reasons why I'm not the best surfer, but what matters is results, right? So therefore, I get cut off. But, you know, like the little ones that come that they're all tired and I act like it's 20 feet. I yell and like that's what fullness is. And like my family, what they also did, they always took me to the jungle, and they always took me to like places where there was kings still. So there was tribes. And like nature is like, I don't think we watch nature anymore. I'm not talking about like going for a hike, you know, or going to the zoo. That's not nature. Yeah. Anyway, you can ask the questions because I was going to go on like another.
Well, I'm curious about that though, because I like where you're heading just then, because, you know, there's a lot of discussion these days about wild spaces and rewilding ourselves and all these very popular use of the word wild. And then when people think of the surfing experience, you know, we talk about, you know, the wild nature of that, and that we're in a space where there are occasionally animals that might want to take an exploratory bite out of us. And,
Right.
And that's a pretty wild experience for a lot of us. But then we're also in a space where, you know, you go underneath a wave and your buoyancy to come back to the surface is the only thing that's working to keep your body alive. Everything else is just doing what it does. And that can feel like a wild experience. But in a world that's becoming increasingly humanized and more our days are dominated by just human to human interaction and human created spaces, it feels like perhaps what's underneath the whole popularity of rewilding and all of that is really a deep need to go to those places. And like you were just saying, you would be taken to those clans or tribe groups that had kings, and that, you know, we through surfing can go and look at nature. Like you're saying, it's not domesticated. There are shapes, there are forces there that are so powerful, and they're changing constantly via the waveform in the ocean. How do you do that when you live in Southern California, where the whole population of the country we're in lives right there, and it is a heavily altered coastline and everything? Is there anything there? Because I feel like you're such a wealth of insight for people right now with what you're sharing. A lot can be learned by people who are listening to this. And well, can you speak to that a little bit, where you were going to go when you were saying looking at nature?
So I'm going to speak as a foreigner, okay? So the only choice, right? It could be a problem, but the only choice that I see in America is where I'm trying to run back to Africa, to Liberia. Let's just start there to just make sure that it's not too late, that we don't, because Africa is trying to play catch up. And it's like, no, we need to like not, or just be dirt, right? Because like the world's going to need to come and just stand on dirt for once. And it's going to be valuable, right? And it's like, don't build supermarkets when we have like farm. It's like, it's all these things that they want to play catch up to be able to do more. And I understand that, but it's like, fly here and experience that. And let them fly there and experience that. The whole world cannot look like the West. It becomes boring, right? But the white race is very explorative. Like it's the colonization in, I don't think is a bad word at all, but it's in, you explore a lot. Us in Africa, we have a spot that we like. We have a spot that we like. So what is it as far as going too far that you are detaching yourself from your natural energy? Like we all know people in LA don't even touch the ground or soil or sun. You're supposed to be in the sun for 8 minutes. Most people are not in the sun for 8 minutes a day. So that's why if you've been to LA, it's just chaotic. You can feel it. You wake up in concrete, go to your car, you're covered, your job, you're inside. So like you're not being like charged naturally. But they sleep under the stars back home. Now, there's a way that we can make tribal wealthy. So like that's my whole thing, tribal wealth, because a tribe is very wealthy, right? You can spend $1 million on a hut. I don't care, but like let that hut be like representation of that land. So it's not about the money at all. I think it would be kind of cool to spend $1 million on a hut, to be honest with you, but the hut just has to be a hut. So I don't know where you can put the $1 million in. You can bury it, but
you can't.
Yeah, you can't eat it. But here is, again, it's technology conquering nature. Like the more pills we have, the more supplements we have, the more things we have, the more it's like, why are we needing that? And I think like that should be the outcry. Like, wait, hold on. What are we doing? Like, where are we going? Like, do we all agree with that? It's like, okay, right now is what we have enough to like sustain it. So I think that's where a lot of the science should be about. Like, do we just not want any grass anywhere unless if you're rich? Like, so Montecito, they're I mean, probably where you live too, but like in California, Montecito, their lands are lush, but they fly everything in, and it's nature. So you go to LA, if you're not wealthy, you're not around trees. And I'm not talking about those little trees that it's like man-made. Like trees don't grow as a stick. That's not a tree. They have it on with a few leaves. And
are you meaning the fake palm trees that are actually the cell phone towers? Because that's a whole another level of distortion. I don't even understand that one.
So I think again, that's why surfing, because they haven't so far conquered the ocean yet, and that's beautiful. It's like at least there's space. So
yeah,
I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah,
no.
for me, 100%. And it was less of a question and more of just sort of conversing with you, really, because I feel like, man, it's so refreshing to just hear the artful nature of your speaking, and that the line that a lot of us, I feel like we all can draw, where we say, oh, this is where I'm logical, this is where I'm rational, this is then when I go out at night and I have lots of alcohol, and then this is when I'm loose and crazy, get out of my mind or whatever. Or often in this modern era, it feels like there's so much compartmentalizing and lines being drawn to divide things, even just in our minds and the way we think and live our lives. But what I'm hearing with you, which is actually quite common when we speak with people who have lived a surfing life and perhaps are in the later part of their lives, the lines have dissolved, the walls have been washed away, and the most like illuminating people that we get to speak with or spend time surfing with, they feel like almost like a river or just another body of water that's actually flowing, and their days are a response to the way the wind is blowing and what swell is coming in and meeting the shore the way.
And there's a storm somewhere else. So that's another thing about surfing. It's like when there's waves somewhere, someone is experiencing an adventure, right? I say everything's an adventure, but a storm could be killing someone. But what do? Do we sit home and feel sorrow, or do we go and enjoy? Because again, the wind blows on us all there.
Thank you to Taki Gold for sharing some of his remarkable story. Many thanks always to our sound engineer and editor, Shannon Soul Carroll. The podcast soundtracks are also composed by Shannon, with additional music by the Band of Frequencies and Taki Gold. On behalf of myself, Lauren Hill, and my partner in rhyme, Dave Rastovich, thank you for making the time to listen with us. If you have a spare moment, please consider leaving a review of the podcast or sharing an episode with a friend. Both help us to find the best stories from our global community of water people. We'll be continuing today's conversation on Instagram, where we're at Water People Podcast. You can find every episode and some extras on our website, waterpeoplepodcast.com.
I notice your scars, baby. I hope you're proud of them. I can save you from compliments. I know you're tired of them. It's been a long day in LA, my dear. I think we all gonna die there. At least I had a chance to surf Rincon. Yeah, came a long way, Liberian boy. Hey, girl, you should cut me open. I can let you know things. Came a long way, Liberian boy. Born king for my sunburned skin. That young chamo, that's my old thing. Came a long way, Liberian boy. So let me slide like my old tire. Give you a grand like my old pop. Came a long way, Liberian boy. Shout out to my dark skin girl, my Liberian girl. She's got to me. Came a long way, Liberian boy. Even though my girl white dream, she eats food like me. Use hands to scoop pepper soup. Yeah. Liberian boy. Proxy in this autopsy world. Yeah. I told her I take her to Monrovia. Grand Bassa to understand Papa slang. Make love on sofa in loafer. Bancante, pan butter my entree. Yeah. Hey mama, I'm so tired. I'm driving all day in my old car. Been on the phone with my old pa. He's rolling down like old tires. Maybe we can go farther. Touche, eh. 3 girls, we can foreplay, eh. We can pretend to be 5 brave. 1 for the soul. I said 1 for the soul. Pastor told me I was so-so. Devil told me I was rose gold. Voodoo saved me from Charles Taylor's gun. Yeah. Seabreeze had a chance to hold me. But it's okay, Liberian boy. Hey, girl, you should cut me off. Yeah, I can let you know things. Came a long way, Liberian boy. Born king from my sunburned skin. That young champion, that's my old. Came a long way, Liberian boy. So let me slide like my old time. Give you a grand like my old car. Shout out to my dark skinned girl, my Liberian girl, she's got to me. Came a long way, Liberian boy. Even though my girl white cream, she eats fruit like me. Use hands to scoop pepper soup. Hey, Liberian boy. Roxy in this autopsy world.